Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today I am going to be drawing this oyster catcher. This is a class, a 30-minute taster class for the Nature Journaling Circle membership. So I thought I'd just kind of take you through just this quick introduction to how I go about drawing. Today in this class, I'm going to be using these Derwent sketching pencils. These are water-soluble graphite pencils, so you can actually use a water brush or a normal brush with these and lift the graphite into a wash as well if you want to. But I'm using these because they're kind of nice and thick. They look good on the camera. You'll be able to see what I'm doing. These go, there's three of them. We've got the light wash, which is an HB, so that's kind of your initial drawing sketching pencil. Medium wash, which is 4B for those darker lines. And finally, the dark wash, which is the 8B pencil, which I usually use to fill in dark areas later on. Now, when it comes to sketching a bird like this, there's two ways you can really go about it. You can start with a line drawing or you can start with shapes. Line drawings usually require you to be a little bit more confident with your sketching than shapes do. So perhaps let's start by looking at the main shapes that make up this bird. Now, usually with birds, I kind of see them as a circle like this, or the body could be more of a teardrop kind of shape, like this. So if you imagine your kind of teardrop shape, your usual teardrop shape, and instead of it sort of being as if it's dropping out someone's eye, just turn it on the side. And it's good to kind of get used to practicing drawing these shapes freehand. Try to avoid lots of little lines like this. Try to kind of have your shape in mind, put your pencil on the page, and make big movements with your pencil of starting to follow a shape. So if you're uncertain, you could sketch it out really lightly first, and then add a little bit more pressure and try to keep your hand moving. So as you can do similarly with the circle here. You see, I'm not too worried about these overlapping lines or anything like that. When you're sketching, it's best not to worry too much about additional lines. It's more about learning that kind of gestural kind of flow of the the pencil or pen on the paper. So let's work into this one down here. I've pretty much already almost got the entire shape of this here. So now that I've got this down, I'm going to go with one of my stronger pencils and put a darker line over the top. So now I'm looking more at how to build out from this shape. So looking at the very top of this oyster catcher, you can see that the back is quite flat, really, and it's going to come up above my teardrop here. So don't get too stuck on this shape. This shape is kind of your little starting point. So now I can see that the wing is coming more like this. And then we've got some tail feathers that are coming out underneath. So I'm quite kind of happy with that top area now. So let's have a little look at the head. This angle here on the back, if you look quite carefully, you can see that that's where the head is going to come out from. So now I'm going to mark this in. You can, if you like to, add another little shape for your head. So you might do this first. So you could, if you were less secure about doing this part as a line, you might want to add a little circle like this to help you to kind of guide your pencil as you go. So now I'm going to just come in under this beak and how we join up to the rest of that body there. The head kind of cuts in quite a lot here. So we've got some interesting kind of angular planes on this bird's head. We've got this one coming up along the top, pointing up this way. Then you've got another one pointing back this way. Then he's almost got a bit of a sort of snub nose where the angles kind of almost point back in here towards where the beak comes out. So I'm going to draw that little area where the beak is coming out here. I'm also going to put in now the position of the eye. This is approximate at this stage. I'm not too worried about it. You can always come back and change it a little bit more later on. Now, angle of the beak here. You see that a lot of this, it's all about how you observe the angles that are in your reference photograph. So spend some time with looking at those angles. It's really important to kind of get used to being able to see and replicate angles when you're drawing. There's our beak here. Now, I'm going to now have a little go at marking out some areas of light and dark. And I'm going to use a different pencil. I'm going to use my medium pencil for this one because I want to be able to do it a little bit more lightly. Let's hold on, let's just check over here. Okay, great. All good. And we've got some areas of white going into the wing, these areas of white feathers. So I'm just roughly putting those in. I'm not, it doesn't matter too much, at this stage about if you're going to get it wrong. It's, keep on looking at your drawing, keep on seeing if you notice that you've done something wrong. While you're using these lighter marks, you've got time to, go and change that as you want to. And since I'm going to be shading with these pencils in a moment, there's loads of time to work that out. I think that now I'm still working from this teardrop shape here, you see. But actually, I think that underneath here, we've got to come away from that. We've got to go a little bit lower. So I'm just going to put in the underside of the belly here now. And where the leg comes out, opposite side. And here's another important angle. So you see, you can't get too hung up on your underlying shapes. This is really important with your shape method. Make sure that you're only using it as a basis for your drawing. You're not getting tied into them. So here's where the legs come out. And then the one at the back here too, is just a little further back here. And you can't see too much of this bird's feet in this picture, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. Just putting a little bit of ground surface underneath. Okay, so that's a pretty quick. How long did that take? Sort of about 5-6 minutes of time working into that sketch. Now, if you start with a circle, you'll see that you've got a little bit more work to do. So from here, you would have to, come out this way, and you're actually quite quickly working back into that teardrop shape. So I'll just do this one really quick, just to sort of show you how you can go about this. Now this time, because you've got that circle in the middle, it comes down a lot further than the teardrop would. So you're able to include that bottom area as a part of the circle here. But what you'll have to be careful with is where this wing comes across and where this joins up here. So for me personally, I much prefer using the teardrop for this one. Some birds, like songbirds, it's much easier to start with a circle in those cases because they've got a much more kind of circular body than this bird does. In this case, I definitely want to mark in the head where I want to put it first. Move it over a little. I definitely find this harder than the one I just showed you. Go back onto my dark pencil now. Sometimes just adding a few extra shapes in, it just gives you a little bit more security. And you want that security because otherwise you can end up with lots of very tentative, slow marks where you're very, very gradually and very, very slowly building up your picture, which is a very inefficient way to work. And I also find it personally, I find it kind of makes me feel a bit anxious working like that because I'm always so worried about what the final result is going to look like. Whereas working this way, if I have to change something like I have up here with the head, it doesn't matter. You just draw over what you've done. But the whole time you're trying to keep that pencil flowing and moving across your page. Let's get this beak in here. I won't work into this one quite as much. I'm just going to put the leg position in. Now, what we're doing here, this is something that is so useful, is to keep on drawing the same bird from the same photograph or the same subject several times. You can use different methods each time, but what you can also do is you can start to kind of critique yourself. What am I changing each time? What am I doing differently? Is my sketch improving? I think that this one, nowhere near as good as this one. And I kind of started from a somewhat incorrect initial shape, whereas this time I observed much more closely and worked from a shape that was a little bit more appropriate. So that's the shape method. It's a wonderful way for you to start looking at something like this. But there's another way, and that is the continuous line method. So I'm just going to take a break briefly here to take a little look at the chat and say hello. So hello, we've got Susan and Jean here. Hello, both of you. Susan says that feathers are very intimidating, and they can be, but what you can do is, especially when you're just doing sketches like this, is not worry about them too much. Look at them as areas of light and dark. And as you can see with this line coming through down here, you don't have to put all of that detail in right away. What you can do instead is decide to put in the general areas, and then after you're happy with those, start to work some of those shapes in. That can work really well as well. So Jean says that the teardrop shape looks really useful. Yes, she's used the circle method and couldn't get on with it. It doesn't work for every bird, and a lot of the time when you have these kind of waders, they're definitely not really circle shaped. And I think this one that I found it difficult. And actually, the fact that I'd drawn a circle here, I needed to then extend it into a teardrop. And if I had done that properly, you see how everything's kind of not in quite the right place. So I think that the teardrop method for this type of bird, it really does work well. In the Nature Journaling Circle, which is my membership, which is where I teach this sort of way most of the time, that's at naturejournalingcircle.com. Last month, we've been looking a lot at birds, and there are lots of references and examples of sketches over in that membership. So, you could see in there some of the other types of birds, and robins and things like this. They're fantastic because they are circular songbirds. In America, you've got like chickadees and things like that. They definitely do start a little bit more like a circle, but not so much for these waders. So there's a few more in the chat. We've got Sarah, Cindy, Lara's here. Hello. Got Michael and Linda. Hello, everybody. Some of these are members of the Nature Journaling Circle, so they're here for a bit of extra homework. It seems, coming and joining in with this too. Cindy's here and says that she was interested in my approach during the Wild Wonder Conference, which fingers crossed, I really hope I'll be teaching at again this year. That would be fantastic. But keep on, hopefully we'll be able to do that. And yes, I am very happy to be doing this little beginners class on YouTube. I'm going to keep on doing a few more of these through the year. but also kind of sharing some of my own sketching as well. Because it's quite nice to work on my own projects sometimes and talk to you all. Right. So, next, line drawing. Now, this is a little bit harder. So with this shape method here, you can you can keep on building your sketch up. You know, you can start with your gentle guidelines around your shape and then build out from there. So if you're a nervous sketcher or a beginner, this way works very well, and it can help you to build up kind of your own sketching style and technique as well. But I'm going to show you something else, and I think that this is one that I use most of the time, and I think it's a confidence thing. So I'm kind of, you know, I've been doing this a long time, and I like to work with line rather than shape almost all of the time, especially when I'm out drawing live birds in the field, because you don't have time by the time you've drawn a shape that isn't the bird anyway. The bird's usually flown off. So I like to start with a line. And one thing you can do if you've got photograph like this, the bird's not going to go anywhere, is have a little play. Now, blind contour drawing is fantastic, and I'm really going to show myself up now, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick blind contour drawing for you of this oyster catcher, and I'm not going to cheat, so I'm going to hide the live stream so I can just see the photograph. Now, what you need to do, that was me not cheating. What you need to do is start at a point, decide somewhere, you know, if your bird's like facing this way, right, you probably want to start on the right most side and start with the head. And what you're going to do is look at the photo, just the photo, not your page. And you're going to try and draw around the bird. And you can get lost really quickly. I'm already a little bit lost doing this. And you go around the bottom, on the head. Am I anywhere near the head where I started? No idea. Come into an eye and a beak. Now, what you can do is, ideally, I'd want to put the legs in now, but I have no idea how to get down there. So I'm not. Hey, this is great. So you end up with something that looks a little bit like a Picasso. Okay, it doesn't look like the bird, but look at what I've done here. I've managed to find that head shape. I've found that angle, because what you're doing is you're looking with your eyes and your pencils following that trace that you're making with your eyes around the bird. So I've managed to find this, I've managed to find this, I've got this pretty much there. But then, okay, I went a bit wrong here. But then look what happens here. I've positioned the eye relative to the beak pretty well. I've got the angle of the beak. So although your overall drawing looks like a Picasso, a bit weird, what you've actually done is trained yourself to look for angles and look for line. So try that. That's a brilliant thing to do with your photos. It's a great warm up before doing any more serious sketching. Another one that you can try with line, little bit less terrifying than blind contour, is to do a continuous line drawing. So this time, same sort of idea. You're allowed to look at your drawing as you look at the bird. That's a photo of the bird. So this time, though, what you're going to do is keep that line going just in the same way, but you're allowed to look at it. So this time you're allowed to pause anywhere along. Give yourself a little moment to look at your drawing and look at the reference, and then carry on. I'm going to go down the back, down under here. So ideally you'd do this a little bit slower than I'm doing it, so give yourself plenty of time. Now, I've got to make a decision here. You want to go, you kind of want to try and do everything all together. Oh, I've made a mistake here. You can ignore your mistakes and just draw over them. Go down here. Ah, this is so hard. This is exactly the sort of thing you should be feeling. I'm feeling, oh, this is already going wrong. Oh no. Try and get back up to where I'm supposed to be. You can do this if you do it quite slow, which I don't really want to do in this stream because I want to get onto some other stuff. You should be able to find that you can do this relatively well if you take it very, very slow. But what you can do, which I think I'm going to have to do here, is keep on going over where you've been as well. Try not to lift your pencil off like I just did. I think that the back needs to go a bit longer. So I'm just going to do that. A bit longer, a bit bigger. I'll try and get the wing in this time. I've put it in the wrong place. Oh no, never mind. Move underneath. So you see how you're just keeping on adjusting all the time, but you're always keeping your pencil going. So this is a kind of little bit less scary, but very, very good way to train yourself to continually to do continuous lines whilst looking carefully at your subject. Something's gone with the head here, so I just need to adjust that. And you see how you're adjusting all the time? Sure, the drawing at the end is going to end up looking a bit odd, but what you've done is you're teaching yourself to keep on adjusting and keep on drawing, keep on that pencil always moving across the page, right? So I'm going to try and get in some of the areas of shading. Looks really weird. I think I'll stop there. You see how originally, like, I got it all kind of a bit wrong at the top, but it has gradually improved. I need to sort these bizarre, look at these legs, aren't they terrible? But I'd need to sort that out. But by continually going over, adjusting each time, eventually what you end up with is something akin to what you've done over here this way. So let's just have a look and see what people have been saying. So Bethany Millam uses posture lines and egg shapes. Posture lines sounds interesting. That's probably a bit more anatomical. So we've got Jean uses a gridded reference and building out from that. Gridded references are fantastic for a purpose. So if you are someone who wants to do a very, very detailed drawing and you're concerned about your drawing skills and you just don't think that you'd be able to draw, without the grid, or it just speeds you up, they're fantastic. And sometimes I certainly used to use this method quite a lot. Nowadays, I don't really need to so much anymore. But if you want to be able to develop an ability to not require a reference photograph, this is the way to do it. So it all kind of depends. Do you want to use a reference photograph all the time, or do you think you'd like to be in a situation where you could draw a bird outside or draw a subject without having a photo of it? That's where this is going. So it's kind of a different technique. For example, you could even trace your photograph, which is totally fine if you want to focus on your drawing. So, you know, it's a different kind of idea, really. Hello, Paula. Um, Sarah says that her blind contour looks funny as well. Well, yeah, I think it's very difficult to do this. If you can do this without it looking weird, you have an incredible skill. Laura says that blind contour's her nemesis. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. Right. Move on to the last little thing that I want to show you in this class. So let's go back to this one because this is kind of my best drawing of all of these. And I just want to show you a little bit about putting shade in. Before that, actually, I'll just quickly say that there is a development from these two as well, which is then using line over different parts of the bird. And that's something that I go through in one of the Nature Journaling Circle classes, which the recording's already up there in the membership. So if you are interested, you could go and find that on there. Right, let's get back to this one. So in the last kind of 5-10 minutes of this quick little class, I'm just going to show you how I'm going to build this out to turn it into more of a sketch with some shading in. So this one, it lends itself really well to doing this shading because it's black and white, so it kind of simplifies things quite a bit. These pencils are fantastic for quick block shading, so that's why I decided to use these ones. And like I said before, if I wanted to, I could actually add some water to this and turn it into a wash, but I don't usually do that, to be honest. So this is an 8B water-soluble sketching pencil with a nice big broad tip. Means that you can fill this out pretty fast. So you see I'm putting over a kind of a layer everywhere of a mid-tone, I'd call this. It's not super dark because even though this bird is black, there is some gradation of colour in here. I see darker areas on this side, so I'm going to block that in. See, I'm trying to get good coverage here. The other thing I'm not doing is I'm not pressing too hard. You can get a little bit too tense with this sometimes, putting too much weight through that pencil. So try to keep it kind of quite light. Think of going over areas more rather than pressing super hard. I'm going to put a little bit of light into that eye, but I want to keep that outline. That's where the red is. So being careful not to kind of colour the whole thing in. Beak, I'm just going to shade a little bit. And then I'm going to go back to the medium one and put in a few little highlights there. So where I don't know if that is actually the gape. It's just where there's a line going across from the top further down, but it kind of peters out by this end. You see the sort of things that it makes you look at and notice. Going back to my thick pencil and going on to the back here. Trying to cover a big old area now. And I'm varying the direction. This is quite important. So in some areas, you're kind of almost trying to follow the planes, right, of where the feathers go. So knowing a little bit of anatomy of the birds helps here. So here where the wings are coming down, I want to have the feathers laying this way. So I've got my strokes laying this way. Over the back, I'm just kind of following the contours of where I've drawn. So getting this base kind of coat on, avoiding the areas here where I've laid out that I want to be white. Now, much darker up this top bit, so that gives you a bit of chance to press a little harder, slightly harder, not too hard, and kind of build into this middle tone. Leaving a few areas where it looks like the light's catching it a little bit. A little bit back here. If you had time, this is where your opportunity is to fill in those feathers. So I'm only going to do it really in a basic way because I don't have a lot of time. But you could go in a bit more detail here before you shade. I'm kind of trying to go around these little white areas. Now here, I want to give the impression of where the feathers are laying over. And mostly that is about leaving some white edges, or light edges, as it were, rather than white as such here. So let there be little gaps like this. So if you do that, it just gives that impression that that's where the feathers are laying. Even if you're not spending a huge amount of time doing observations of every individual feather. Now, just going to build into this area here a little bit because you can see that some of the feathers are poking into there. Try and make sure at this point that the shapes are approximately right, filling in areas where I think they're not quite there. and also adding a few little light touches of pencil in there. You can sort of see the effect that you're getting. Now, back here for the tail, leaving a few of those white areas again. And now, finally, I'm just going to go into this sort of area underneath. And this you need to be doing a slightly different way. If you wanted to, there's the opportunity now to rub out this teardrop line. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it there. It's part of the growing of the sketch to me, so I'm quite happy for it to stay. Just trying to get in this area that's in a little bit of shadow back here. Finally, a little bit on this leg. Front leg, not so much. It's one of the lighter areas, so I'll leave it alone, I think. Perhaps a little down there, a little underneath. And that's about as far as I would take it, because this is a sketch. It's not a full drawing. It's a training exercise, let's call it that. In this, I was trying to look for areas of light and shade. I was trying to look for this shape and come out with an approximation of that photograph. If you wanted to go into a lot more detail, then you'd use a different approach to this, which I may show in a future stream. But I think the very detailed things can be very difficult to really show because of the amount of work. It just takes too long in real time. There we are. So hopefully you found that useful. Let's just, before I go, let's just hop over to the chat and just say hello to everybody again. So we've got Gellis, is that how I pronounce it? Hello. And Agnes, hello there. Paula is saying that this shading is effective and works well. So it's really good to hear that even though I did this quite quickly, you can still get enough of an impression. And if you were outside, say, and you're looking at a group of wading birds that are sticking around, that they're not flying off and flitting around like the smaller birds do. This is the kind of sketch that you might have time to actually do in the field. So it's all about getting that underlying drawing right first. So that's the kind of that would be your quick line technique probably if you were outside. But then you could use this kind of excellent fast sketching technique, and that's where big old chunky pencils can really come in well. They can really do well for that. So these are the Derwent sketching. I will put a link to those up in the description when I get off of this, and so you can go and find something like it. So Cindy's just asked to talk about the Nature Journaling Circle membership, which yes, I probably should do. So the membership at the moment, it's open for founding members, so it's brand new. It has I opened it up in January. There are 2 live sessions every month. So there is a tutorial, and then there's a kind of a sketching practice social little kind of session where you come in and you just have a little sketch with me, and those are quite nice as well. All of the tutorials are recorded. They go up into a library, so that library of tutorials just keeps on growing essentially. And there's also some pre-recorded courses on there. There's how to start a nature journal and painting nature in Derwent Inktense on there at the moment. But the plan is to do a coloured pencil course and basically a course like this, a sketching course on there within the next year. We'll just see how we get on with that, to be honest. But that library is always growing. The membership is at the moment it's £10 a month. So I think that works out about 12 US dollars. I think someone can correct me if that's wrong. And yeah, that's all it is. And it's a recurring membership. When the price goes up, which it will do next month, anybody who joins as a founding member, the price doesn't change. So, that just kind of keeps on going. So if you get in now and you stay a member, it will stay £10 a month. So I think that covers the Nature Journaling Circle. I'm very excited. I love teaching in this way. I love teaching live. So I really enjoy doing this, and it's a lovely little community that we've got on there as well. And some of the members are here in the chat right now, which is really nice. So yeah, thank you very much for watching along. I'm going to set this now as a video on YouTube so you can kind of watch it anytime and come back to it if you need to. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching, and I'll see some of you again soon.